In April of 2018, I set foot in Campo, California and started my 2,650-mile long trek from Mexico to Canada. And in this video, I am going to share with you how much it cost me to thru hike the Pacific Crest Trail and share some areas where you can save money on your thru hike and then some areas where you can't really skimp. There are many ways one would need to prepare for an adventure like a thru hike, but finances is a really big part of that. A thru hike is not a fixed financial adventure. It can fluctuate drastically, but where do you even start? I've got my trusty laptop here to help us with this. So if you were to type into Google, how much does it cost to thru hike the Pacific Crest Trail, one of the first links that pops up is an article from REI, and it says that hiking the Pacific Crest Trail can cost anywhere from $4,000 to $8,000. And here they have this including all your gear, end-to-end expenses, etc. Something else you might find is that somebody estimated that it'll take $2 for every single mile and sometimes $3 for every single mile. So for the Pacific Crest Trail, $2 for 2,650 miles, that comes out to $5,300. Or if you're on the high end, $3 for every mile, that'll come out to just shy of $8,000. But what exactly is all of this money going towards? I went back into my bank statements and compiled every single expense that I made and categorized them. And since I'm a nerd and an engineer, I put it into this wonderful 3D chart for your enjoyment. We just got to put it out there that I am on the high spectrum of this, okay? I didn't really know how much it was going to cost me to thru hike the Pacific Crest Trail. I didn't do much research. I just saved $10,000. So you have to understand that my spending is much higher than what you can actually save to thru hike the Pacific Crest Trail. So, you know, let's just get that past us. I broke my expenses down into 9 categories: food and drinks, resupply, lodging, gear and clothing, post office, subscriptions, commuting, body care, and miscellaneous. But I need to let you know that none of these numbers include anything I purchased before I started trail. These numbers are just from that first day I set foot on the Pacific Crest Trail until I ended, which was about 5.5 months. It cost me about $8,400 to hike the Pacific Crest Trail. And man, was I having a good time. So that is a very high number, okay? I understand that. That number is not the point of this video. The point of this video is to share with you where I spent my money and to give you some tips on where you don't need to spend that much money, and then show you the areas where you can't really skimp. But let's start with the biggest expense for me, and this was food and drinks in towns. Now this made up about almost a third of my total expense, and this is a category that you definitely do not need to spend that much money on. I spent about $2,700 on eating out at restaurants and lots of beer. I'm not ashamed. The reason why this number is so high is one, I was on trail for 5.5 months. That's a lot of restaurants, no home cooking, nothing like that. I also ate out in every single town. That was part of my experience. When I wanted to hike the Pacific Crest Trail, I also wanted to really enjoy the towns, and that meant eating at all the little cafes or the restaurants. I would also take several zeros back to back, which meant, you know, I just kept eating at restaurants, and then you're tipping, and then you're probably having beer, and it just really adds up. This is completely avoidable, and especially as I was like getting more into my hike, my hiker hunger really kicked in, and I would a lot of the times be ordering 2 meals at once. Like, no lie, and it can get really expensive. I was having the time of my life. This even included one time I ordered $200 worth of pizza because it was a hiker's birthday for everyone to eat. If you really can't save that much money, just know, like, you won't be able to eat out at restaurants as much. You don't need to drink alcohol. You don't need to buy a hiker $200 worth of pizza for his birthday. This number can be easily lowered. However, if you are just wanting to enjoy the experience without having to worry about if you can only eat at a restaurant once a week or anything like that, I would save some money so you can have some beer when you want. You can eat at a few cool restaurants in these really awesome little towns you'll come across. So just make sure you plan accordingly for that. The next category is resupply. And I actually think my number for this is quite low. Resupply was only about 10% of my total cost. And the reason why this was so low for me is mainly because of you guys. So many of you wrote me and asked if you could send me resupply packages, and because of that, you really helped me out financially because I didn't have to resupply a lot. And even if I had to get some things at a store, it was all very like little minor things. So thank you all so much to anyone who helped me out with that, because like I said, I'm pretty sure this is a low number. However, I was also queen of going through the hiker boxes. And the hiker boxes are places where hikers get rid of anything and everything that they don't want anymore, or they have double of or excess of. So I would raid all of the hiker boxes for food, especially like at Warner Springs and the towns in the very beginning of the trail. People are sending themselves too much food because they don't really know. So those hiker boxes are filled with meals and meals and meals, and I literally didn't spend like 1 cent on resupply for the first like 200 towns, for the first 200 miles. Woo! But another reason why I feel like my number is pretty low and why it would be lower in general was because I didn't have a stove, and therefore I didn't have to worry about buying any fuel for my stove or anything like that. And dehydrated meals and meals you have to cook can be a lot more expensive if you don't make them at home. So if you're trying to save money, I would definitely recommend dehydrating your own food before the trail and sending yourself resupply packages. Yeah, you're probably gonna spend more money on like the post office, but it is going to be much cheaper to prepare your meals and send them to yourselves before the trail. I did resupply along the trail, but like I said, so many of you sent me packages that I didn't actually have to resupply that much. I also have no dietary restrictions. I'll eat anything. I'm like a garbage disposal. So another reason why you should probably, spend the money up front to send yourself resupply packages is if, you're vegan or you need to eat gluten-free or dairy-free. You're not always gonna find all of those options along the trail. They do exist. Places are becoming more abundant with options for people with dietary restrictions, but it is probably gonna be more expensive, or you're just gonna have to eat like the same thing because there's not much variety. So, resupply, you can probably actually spend a lot of this money up front, so you don't really have to worry about it so much when you're on the trail, and that is an option. I met someone on the trail who had a very strict budget, and they were limited